Thanks to all of you for being here, for caring. I think there is no more important conversation in the world. As has been said all day, this is the elephant in the room. This is 1,000 gigatons of carbon that is the legacy of humanity now in the atmosphere. So it's our job to do something about it. What we've been talking about today is carbon removal. And that is incredibly important if humanity is to remain on the planet. It is tomorrow, Earth Day, and people routinely say, save the Earth. The Earth will be fine. It's humans who are in trouble. We're very good at putting pollution out there. In 1990, the global carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels were about 22 billion metric tons, gigatons. In 2023, it's 37.4 gigatons. It's now 42.4 gigatons. As a result, the climate has been warming and will continue to warm. Whatever we do, it's going to continue to warm for a while. It's in the nature of what's baked into the system. That's a problem. So we're confronting an existential risk to everything that we claim to value. The good news, we can solve this. There are a multitude of ways. You just heard one, whale poop. Who knew? Peter, ocean iron fertilization. These are ways of taking carbon out of the atmosphere and locking it up. That is the most important thing that we can do as humanity. But it's only half of the equation. The other half is we've got to stop putting 42.4 billion metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. Again, we know how to do that. The good news on that front, doing it is profitable. How can I say that? Because it's happening. Sorry to the Texicans who love their fossil fuels, this is a dying industry. How is it dying? We have, in 2017, we hit peak fossil use in vehicles, and it's going down. Half the vehicles now produced in China are electric vehicles. When you go to China, they're everywhere. Owning one is cheaper over its lifetime than owning a fossil-fueled vehicle. It's simply a better investment for you. They're also better to drive. I traded a Porsche in for my Leaf, 2011 Leaf, an old generation Leaf. The EVs out now are just simply awesome. Oh, they're a little more expensive than a fossil-fueled vehicle. In the United States, in China, the BYD Gull, $7,000, 300-mile range. These are now flooding the developing world. Why? It's cheaper. And this will continue to happen. Africa is going solar. Pakistan, in the recent run-up in oil prices, price of gas, Pakistan is faring reasonably well because they are increasingly putting up solar. Solar everywhere on the planet is cheaper than equivalent fossil. And as a result, last year, somewhere over 90% of all new capacity was solar, wind, various renewables. Despite the best effort of the fossil industry, and make no mistake, they see that this is an existential issue for them, and they are fighting very hard. This is why you have all the disinformation about, oh, solar doesn't shine at night. Of course not, that's what batteries do, or wind. So, full stop, we are on the transition away from fossil energy, and this will only continue and accelerate. That is very good news. That starts to get rid of the additional 42 gigatons every year that humanity has been pumping out there. Peter wants to increase the ability of the oceans to absorb more, which is good. In a warmer world, the oceans are at risk. They are the largest carbon sink on the planet. They are at risk of becoming a carbon source. That's a problem. So what Peter's suggesting that we do is ensure that the carbon that gets locked up in the phytoplankton goes into a downwelling eddy and goes deep and thereby gets sequestered for at least the amount of time that humans care about. Now, I don't know about you, I have a hard time caring about next week, let alone the next decade. Well, at some point in there, I will be safely dead. The young people in the room have, 70 more years to go? So you care about 100-year blocks. Humans just have a very hard time thinking in long time scales. So when Peter says this stuff will stay down there for hundreds to maybe thousands of years, that's a climate solution. Is it the ultimate climate solution? We don't yet know. Whale poop. How much can you put down? What were the numbers he was throwing? 4 to 64 gigatons a year? That's a big difference. We don't know. Okay, that's what science is. You go find out, run some experiments. What if we could sequester carbon profitably? I'm a capitalist. Capitalism is our middle name, Natural Capitalism Solutions. So I get interested when I hear that there are ways of doing this that don't cost, that actually put money in your pocket. As the regenerative farmer Gabe Brown says, I'd rather sign the back of the check than the front of the check. What if cows are the solution to the climate crisis? No, can't be. Cows, methane. They burp, they fart. So do you, by the way. And what comes out is methane. As Russ Conzer says, it's not the cow, it's the how. If you ranch industrially, you're part of the problem. Industrial agriculture is responsible for up to 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. Done the way it is, well, the American model. We hear the American farmer will feed the world. Actually, that's not true. 80% of food on Earth is produced by smallholder farmers, most of them in the rest of the world, most of them women. If you do it right, the cow stops being the problem and starts becoming part of the solution. How? I mentioned Gabe Brown. Gabe was a North Dakota corn, soybean commodity farmer going broke. Because he was going broke, he said, I'll try anything. People said, stop breaking the prairie soil. Go to no-till. So he did that. He said, okay, how do I get nutrients into my soil without buying fertilizer? Fertilizer right now is an agricultural crisis. Who knew that attacking Iran would wipe out the American farmer? Yeah, that was a bright one to do. Most of the natural gas that gets converted into fertilizer came out of the Straits of Hormuz. And right now, if you're a farmer, unless you have forward contracts for the fertilizer for this planting season, you're not getting any. It's unobtainable. Ooh, what's that going to do to food availability? We didn't think about that. We're going to think about it. We're going to think about it in this country. We're definitely thinking about it in Europe, and the rest of the world is seriously troubled. So we are going to see massive famine in communities in this country, in Europe, but particularly in the rest of the world. There are already something like 1/3 billion people right now starving. Not just hungry, starving. And this is going to get worse. Yeah, we have lots of problems, don't we? The Earth doesn't care, frankly. The Earth was at 1,000 parts per million concentration of CO2 60 million years ago. But there weren't any humans. There were palm trees and crocodiles in Greenland, and it was very hot and steamy. I would not have liked it. I'm a Colorado kid, and I like it cold. And could y'all ship some of this rain to Colorado? We're now in a drought. What Gabe did when he went to no-till and started looking for fertilizer was he was told, plant cover crops, deep-rooted, diverse cover crops that fix nitrogen in the soil. What? If you look at the concentration of gases in the atmosphere, a whole lot of it's nitrogen. So when you have lightning and then rain, the nitrogen comes onto the ground. If you have vegetation that can capture it, concentrate it, and provide it to the roots of your crop, you've just fertilized your crop. Most of the minerals that farmers need can come out of the sky if you have the right mix of diverse cover crops. Gabe did that. He said, how am I going to drill seed my corn and soybean? My fields are all covered in all these damn cover crops. Cows. He turned out his cows, which ate down the cover crops, and come spring, he was able to drill seed his corn and soy. He was curious what this would do to his finances. He got as high or higher yields of corn and soy as his neighbors who were paying $50,000, $150,000 a year to buy the fertilizer, but he's now not paying that. He's now starting to become profitable. Gabe said, what if everybody started doing this? And so Gabe now goes around the country teaching this stuff. If you want to see Gabe on video, great film called Common Ground that walks through Gabe's story. Brown Ranch now has 8 separate products, not just corn and soy, but oats and wheat and millet and a lot of grains, plus beef, lamb, chicken, honey. They have diversified. Oh, and they're now profitable. Companies get interested when you can show them profit. And so if you go on the General Mills website and look up regenerative agriculture, you will find a set of principles. Minimal disturbance to the soil, cover crops, diverse plants, keeping the soil covered year-round, living root in the soil year-round, and animal impact. Where did they get those principles? They hired Gabe. Smart. Interestingly, when you do all of this, you get higher nutrient density. A man named David Montgomery, scientist up in Washington, said, what did your food eat? And what are you eating? Grass-fed beef has more omega-3 oil than wild-caught salmon. Farms that use regenerative agriculture have higher levels of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals than farms that use chemicals. Oh, and you don't get the chemical ad. The no-till vegetable farms, same thing. So where did your tomatoes come from? Where did your carrots come from? How were they grown? Do you care whether you are eating empty calories or whether you are really getting the nutrients? If they come from regenerative farms, you're getting higher nutrients. 15% more vitamin E, 14% more vitamin B1, 17% more vitamin B2, 11% more calcium, 16% more phosphorus, 27% more copper, more nutrients. So you can not care about the climate, you can not care about any of what I've been talking about, just care about what's going into your own body. It's still a good deal to be buying stuff produced by regenerative farms. In Gabe's case, no fertilizer required, delivering 114.8 produce a bushel of corn, which he sold for more than $3.50. Neighbor fertilized corn at 100 pounds of 46.00 per acre at a cost of $3.25 per acre, got 14.6 bushels per acre. Profitability, $17 an acre. Gabe's making more money, which in his case was what he set out to do in the first place. Now, he noticed a couple of other interesting things. He started measuring everything. First thing he discovered is his soil had greater water holding capacity. Every 1% increase in soil organic carbon is 5 to 10 tons of carbon per acre and 20,000 gallons of water holding capacity. In a drought, this matters. There's a wonderful woman in Africa, Natalie Topa, who works on what she calls sponge houses. She teaches the women, in this part of the Sahel, most of the men have left, to do regenerative agriculture, putting carbon into the soil. They don't care about the carbon. They're really not interested in the climate, although they ought to be, because in a hotter, drier world, they're going to have a harder time farming. What they care about is the literally cup worth of rain they get a year is now sufficient for them to grow vegetables year-round. You can Google Natalie Topa. There are a whole set of videos of what she's been doing across the Sahel, lifting very poor women out of poverty using regenerative agriculture. I've worked for a while with a man named Vijay Kumar. Vijay was an extension agent in India, Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh was a part of the world that was the subject of the Green Revolution. And this is the Norman Borlaug idea that American industrial agriculture is the solution to the world. So lots of chemicals, lots of machinery, and you will increase productivity. And indeed it did in the short run, at rather large cost. If USAID is funding it all, you may be able to do it for a little while. If the funding dries up, now you, the farmer, are having to buy this fertilizer. So India, the government, has been subsidizing farmers to buy fertilizer at millions of dollars a year. The farmers were going broke, kind of like Gabe. In Andhra Pradesh, they started drinking pesticide to kill themselves, to deal with the fact that they could no longer provide food for their families. Vijay was tasked with female empowerment. He said, I can't empower these women if they can't eat. So he took Gabe's 5 principles, added 4 more indigenous to India. He said, no poisons, no herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, fertilizer, only indigenous seed that you can save year on year. So you get rid of that cost. Make your own fertilizer out of cow manure and urine and effectively compost, and then make your own mycorrhizal inoculant. Coat the seeds with it. Now you can plant any time in the year. Gabe calls it ATM, anytime money. Previously in India, you planted once a year, trying to time it to the monsoon. If the monsoon came early, late, or didn't come, you were wiped out. Vijay has shown that he can double profitability, triple productivity with no artificial inputs in 1 year's time. People say, oh, well, we can't transfer to regenerative agriculture. It takes 3 years to become organic certified. They don't care about organic certification. They want to eat. And this dramatically increases their productivity. He started with a few villages. There are now over 1 million farmers in Andhra Pradesh doing this. It's spreading to 9 other states in India. So I put Vijay together with a guy I work with. We brought Vijay's champion farmers to Zambia and taught the Salesian sisters, the Jesuit brothers who run agricultural learning centers, how to do this. In the first year, 7-fold increase in productivity. Big wow. And of course, what none of this mentions is the reason this works is you're putting carbon in the soil, which increases the ability to hold water. And if you do it regeneratively, if you're not breaking the soil and you're not spraying chemicals, the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil is mineralizing the carbon. When the pioneers went across the Great Plains of the United States, they found 10 feet of thick black soil. That black is carbon. It got there because of the coevolution of grasslands, the world's 2nd largest carbon sink, and grazing animals. Professor Greg Ritalik said, why is it that the Earth used to be 1,000 parts per million concentration of CO2? When humans evolved, it was 280 parts per million. Where'd the carbon go? So he started studying this, and what he found is that in large part it went into the soil. Everywhere around the Earth that there are grasslands, there are what are called mollisols, thick layers of black soil. What happened was around 30 million years ago, there evolved little grazing animals that nibbled the grass at the edge of the forests. Oh, at 1,000 parts per million, the Earth's carpeted in trees. I mean, I love trees. I used to be with an outfit called Tree People in Los Angeles. We planted over 1 million trees. It's not the answer to the climate crisis. The Earth can be very hot and high concentration of CO2 and a lot of trees. But with these little animals, pre-horses, nibbling the grasslands spread, and the carbon started to go into the soil. We can do this again. Managing herds of animals the way nature did. Henry, you spoke about biomimicry. This is pure biomimicry. In nature, herds are dense packed because of predators. If you're a wildebeest on the veld in Africa and you're about to get eaten by a lion, The safe place to be is in the middle of the herd. Everybody's trying to get into the middle of the herd. You stay in a herd, you move as a herd, eating everything in front of you, trampling everything under you, fertilizing everything behind you, and you don't come back until the grass has regrown. What if we managed grazing animals that way? Horses, cows, pigs, sheep, chickens, anything that will eat grass. When an animal eats grass, the rides sugars. That feeds the microbiological community, particularly the mycorrhizal fungi. That mineralizes the carbon. That's how the 10 feet of thick black soil got there that industrial agriculture has now taken to an inch or less. We have decarbonized the grasslands of the world. The grasslands of the world are vast. So if we simply practiced more profitable agriculture, whether it be raising animals or whether it be growing row crops, we would be putting carbon into the soil. How much? This is the big question for iron fertilization, for whale poop, for regenerative agriculture. How much, how fast? We don't know. There are some illustrative numbers. It turns out that, back of the envelope calculation by some folk at Tufts, if we did regenerative grazing on all the world's grasslands, that's a big if, but remember, doing this is more profitable. 60 to 100 years, we're back to 300 parts per million. That's just grazing. Now, it's a little longer than you want, but we're still reasonably in the ballpark. Rodale Institute has calculated if you did regenerative organic row cropping, you could offset as much carbon as humanity now emits every year. If you're not emitting it, you're now rolling climate change backward at a profit. And again and again and again, the numbers are coming in that this stuff is simply more profitable because you're not putting out the expense to buy the fertilizer, because you can, in some cases, sell it for more money. It's just better business. Soil Health Institute studied 100 farms in the part of the US which is where 71% of the corn, 67% of the soy is grown. Organic farmers reported 97% increased resilience to extreme weather, 67% higher yields, quarter cut the cost to grow the corn by $24 an acre, soy by $17 an acre. Average farm profits increased $52 an acre for corn, $45 an acre for soy. Oh, except why are we growing corn and soy? What do you do with it? Feed it to animals. Were animals supposed to eat corn and soy? What were they supposed to eat? Grass. When you feed corn and soy to animals in feedlots, you make them sick. So what do? Load them with antibiotics. What if we took the middle of the US and returned it to grassland, as it was when the pioneers came across, harvested it with cattle, pigs, sheep, chickens, and started putting carbon in the soil and started paying the farmers to do that? If you take the costs of, say, carbon capture and sequestration, and those numbers are all over the map too, $600 to $1,000 per ton for direct air capture, per ton captured. If you took that money and started giving it to farmers for being carbon farmers, the farmers are healthier. And of course, right now with all the darn tariffs, the farmers were unhappy before they couldn't buy fertilizer. They're now rather seriously unhappy. Peter, you don't know what it will cost to do the iron in the oceans. Henrik, you're looking for investment to figure out if you can do whale poop. We know that doing regenerative agriculture is profitable. So I'm not saying we should only do regenerative agriculture and don't do whale poop and don't do ocean iron fertilization. We need, at the moment, we need everything we can lay our hands on as fast as we can do it. But we do know that we can offset 10 to 20 gigatons a year just through regenerative grazing and organic row cropping. So what can you do about this? How many of you eat? Every time you buy something to eat, ask, was this regeneratively grown? The answer is going to be no, 90+% of the time. But the act of your asking will get the vendor to, what? What's regenerative agriculture? Now you're in a conversation. When you have the option, when you go to the grocery store, ask, is this regeneratively grown? In this country, you can get what's called ROC certified, regenerative organic certified. Always preferentially buy ROC certified products. Why? You're putting carbon in the ground, you're getting higher nutrient density in the food you're eating. It's just a good thing to do all the way around. And it's something every one of us does every day, preferably 3 times a day, is eat. As Wendell Berry says, eating is an agricultural act. So you can be, even if you're not a farmer, you can be a part of driving this solution just by choosing what you eat. Now, if you don't want to eat something with a face, I don't care. Without grazing animals on the ground, we are not going to solve the climate crisis unless you guys are really right and can do it fast. We need grazing animals on the ground. Okay, you could ranch, what we were hearing earlier, caribou in the north, the megafauna of the Arctic, elephants in Africa. There's lots of wildlife you could ranch to put carbon into the ground. Full stop, you need animal impact on the ground if you want to get carbon out of the air and into the ground. If you're not doing it as part of a market, now you're paying extra for it. Now we're into the paying for whale poop or paying for ocean iron fertilization. Okay, that may be worth doing, but me, I like a good steak. I just want it to be grass-fed, regeneratively grown. Now, I did this on my own ground using horses. Same outcome. In a citizen science program, I won what was called the Humongous Fungus Award. It's my proudest award for the highest concentration of mycorrhizal fungi on my piece of ground compared to dozens of other people who had farms, ranches, orchards, gardens. The mycorrhizal fungi is what drives the mineralization of the carbon. So I was very proud to get the horses. All in, we know how to solve this problem. And, you know, Jane Goodall said, we need hope. To me, hope is a vacuous emotion. I prefer the title of a whiskey that I'm rather fond of, Courage and Conviction. We don't need hope, we just need to goddamn well do it. That said, about 3 years ago, I was going to quit. Came into a little bit of money, and my husband said, great, now you can retire. stay home, ride your horse, watch an eagle fly. I live on a beautiful ranch in Colorado. And so I asked myself, you add up everything I've ever done. Is it enough? No, we're losing. Do I know what enough is? Then why go down the road? Why burn carbon? So in the spring of 2022, I said, all right, I will hang up my spurs. Man I worked with asked me to come on one last trip. He said, at these events, a workshop in Munich, B Corporation Global Leaders Summit in Rome, retreat in Assisi, would be a man that I had fought for 2 years prior to that. He'd run a big UN program on food. It was all the big producers, run by a gal who runs the Green Revolution Association out of Africa. All the good NGOs said, nope, we're out, it's counterfeit. And I got voluntold I was going to be a part of it. It's like, well, why me? President of the Club of Rome said, shut up, do it. It's like, all right, if I have to do this, I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to take it and the guy running it down. I'll be go to hell if I'm going to let the UN put its imprimatur on big agriculture. So for 2 years during COVID, I'm getting up at 3 in the morning to do 4 a.m. Zoom calls because nobody cares about the Colorado time zone. And I'm grumpy anyway. So when people say things like, you can't feed the world with organic agriculture, I'd flood the chat box with all of the verification of, oh, yes, you can, and in fact, it'll do it better. FAO report out in 2013, there is no hope of feeding the world with industrial agriculture. Small-scale organic agriculture is the only thing that will do it. Well, the American farmer feeds the world. Nope, it's women in the rest of the world. And generally making a nuisance out of myself. In due course, being a bitch got boring, so I quit. COVID was coming to an end, it's like, fine. And the guy promoted me. Why'd he do that? He could be rid of me. So I quit again, he promoted me again. I'm running working groups, writing big research papers. And slowly, slowly, this thing was heading in the direction of regenerative agriculture. Supposed to be a big meeting in New York, fall of 2021. I said, all right, I'll go. The UN pled COVID, it was all online, set-piece UN speeches. I listened to the first one and clicked out. And then the UN pulled the plug, killed the whole thing. It's like, wow, I win, yay! I thought. So when Walter said the guy who ran this food system summit was going to be at these meetings, I thought, oh, this will be piquant. I'd halfways enjoy to meet the man I fought for 2 years. Get to Munich, I can see him across the way wearing his fancy suit. He gets up, gives a speech on regenerative agriculture I could have given. So I marched over, I said, howdy, my name's Hunter Lovins. He laughed, he said, I know who you are. Yeah, probably so, huh, after 2 years of my insurgency. I said, I may have been wrong about you. And we sat down and talked, and he said, you care about the climate? The UN can never solve the climate crisis, which I kind of knew. This is the pin from Kyoto, that was COP3. This is the pin from Belém, that was COP30. That's 30 years of talk. He said, the structure of UNFCCC, Framework Convention on Climate Change, is that any one nation can veto anything. Saudi makes $1 billion a day every day they delay action on climate. Yeah, really think anything's going to come out of the COP process? Like, no. So I said, what then? He said, what we need is conferences of people independently organized. He calls it COPX. That would be enough. Then I thought, I have no idea how to do that, nor do I know anybody who could. You take all the usual suspects, and blessings on them for all the work they've done. Al Gore, Christiana Figueres, Greta Thunberg, Bill McKibben, Johan Rockstrom. They would all make it about them. I'm the leader. You can't do a people's movement around a leader. So I flew down to Rome. I sort of shrugged, went on down to Rome. This guy followed. We wound up on a bus crossing Italy for about 7 hours. I had no agenda, just riding down the miles. We're telling war stories. And somewhere in the middle of Italy, I thought, I think this guy can do it. I remembered how he had handled the Food Systems Summit, where I did my level best to take him down. And then he looked at me and said, join me. And I thought, if this would be enough, if this would do it, mobilizing the people of the world to begin implementing the known solutions in their own communities, in their own ways. Not top down, not I have the answer, you do it my way, but asking them, what can you do in your community? Tell us about it. Let's celebrate it together. And I looked at him and said, I will ride for your brand. I said, you've no earthly idea what I just said, but you'll figure it out. To a cowgirl, it means I'm all in. He remains a very senior UN official. No, I'm not going to tell you his name. If the UN figured out what we're doing, they'd fire him. He has family that he supports. He said, would I be the face of COPEX? Me? So I'm doing my best to do my darndest, and that's just about all, I guess, as Corblund says. We're making it up as we go along. We had a webinar today, which is why I disappeared from this group for a little while. Supposed to be talking with a guy out of Germany who's father of the German solar miracle. He's on a plane to Argentina. So it's like, okay. Here we have 30 people who came to hear Hans Josef talk. Let's go around and ask people, what are you going to do for Earth Day? And people started popping off with their projects. And it actually became a better webinar than having one guy up in front, however great he is, talking about what he's done. So I will say to you what the ambassador said to me. Join us. www.copx.global. Become a COPEX organizer. There are now 1,000 of us in 57 countries. And we are literally making this up as we go forward. So if you can fertilize the oceans, blessings on you. Fenric can make whale poop. I actually don't care how he makes it. If he can get it done and get it to sink, brilliant. I know we can do regenerative agriculture. I know each one of us, every time we eat something, can ask, where did it come from? Was it grown by a farmer who is making a living wage, who has high quality of life? The issues of social justice matter in this movement. And figuring out how to build locally based solutions that all of us can participate in, this matters. But I have no doubt, I don't know if we'll do it by 2050, I have no doubt that in the lifetime of the young people sitting here, we will solve the climate crisis. And we will do it together. Thank you. Questions? Did I say anything controversial? Way back.
Way back.
Alan Savory from Africa made a big hit with the ranchers 2-3 decades ago. And everything.
Has a new book out, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, Alan is 90 years old.
Wow.
Literally, he wrote me last week saying, I'm sending you a copy of the book. Give me your address. Like, oh. Yes, go ahead.
Well, his whole approach, made so much sense, and my friends that were ranchers adopted those smaller paddocks and keeping the livestock moving. But I've got a question about I've seen in Switzerland the liquefied cow patties that are then sprayed all over the fields, which I think ultimately led to a typhoid fever outbreak some years ago. But is that an effective way to refertilize a pasture?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. So
Now, there are all sorts of schemes of taking something that's waste and putting it somewhere else. That's why the animal impact is so important. And there are a whole bunch of things I left out. Cows have a saliva that helps the mycorrhizal fungi. The eating of the grass is what makes the roots slough polysaccharides, feeding the mycorrhizal fungi. The trampling of the biomass into the soil, and then the fertilizing it when they go along. Oh, methane, by the way. If a cow is on grass, yeah, they burp and fart, and there is methanotropic bacteria in the grass that eats the methane, turns it into carbon dioxide. Take them off the grass, put them in a feedlot, feed them corn and soy, and you've got a problem. So, no, leave the cows on the ground, or sheep or pigs. Agrovoltaics, solar cells slightly raised up so the animals can have shade. It increases the growth rate of the animals. It cools the solar panels. And it turns out to be one of the best bee habitats anywhere. Yeah, who knew? We are learning so much. One of Alan's dicta that I most respect is assume you're wrong and test for that. Humans tend to say, oh yeah, I'm right, and try to prove it. Assume you're wrong and test for it. You'll learn more.
In Holland, they're having a problem with cattle, and basically I understand that they're banning cattle because there's just too much accumulation of nitrogen from their poop and so forth. Are any of these practices help with that problem, or is there the scope of concentration of cattle just exceeding what could be handled with regenerative practices like this?
There was a magnificent regenerative farm in the Netherlands that was put out of business by those regulations. There is another one outside of Berlin that's doing just fine. In the Netherlands, what they were trying to do is maximize production of the meat, not maximize carbon into the ground and regenerative nature of the farming, because the farmers are trying to make more money. I don't blame them. Again, if we took some of the cost that we pay because of climate damage and paid it to the farmers could then ranch farm in ways that are truly regenerative, and then your excess manure problem goes away. If the cows are on the ground, you don't have a problem. In the Netherlands, they have high rises for pigs. Like, what?
What?
Seriously. Yeah, they have buildings that have these animals stacked, and they have to haul all the manure out, and now they have a manure problem. Like, leave the pigs on the ground. But the Netherlands is a small country. So if you're trying to maximize the amount of food produced on a small piece of ground, you're going to try to increase the density of animals. Although when you farm regeneratively, you can double the carrying capacity of animals on the same piece of ground in a way that where the manure is going into the soil rather than into lagoons. We do the same thing in this country. Here in Texas, there are vast feedlots. So Arizona is taking the water that no longer comes down the Colorado River and growing alfalfa to ship it here to Texas to feed cows. This is going to end, by the way. The rainfall in the Rockies is, snowpack's 27% of normal. Colorado River this year is not going to have the water that it has had, which means Lake Powell is nearing what's called dead pool. It can no longer flow enough water through it to generate hydro. And that means the 7 states that make up the Colorado Compact, which expired, are at each other's throats, and if they don't come up with a deal in the next month or so, it'll go to the Supreme Court. Like, oh boy. None of them will like the outcome of that. There's a great film just out called The River that goes into all of this mess. But again, if you do regenerative agriculture, you start putting carbon in the soil, you increase the water holding capacity. Now you're starting to move into the solution for the drought problem. So all this stuff fits together. As John Muir said, you tug on any one piece of the environment, you find it's attached to everything else. Is it beer 30? 8 minutes to beer 30. If somebody has a burning question, step right up. If you don't, I'm going to go have a beer. Happy to chat with any of you at any time. Please join COPEX.
Yay.